Well, first of all, let me say that I'm very excited to be here today, and I want to thank the whole team of the African Jersey Forum to giving me the opportunity uh, to speak today and share some of my experience on the dairy sector and the Jersey breed in West Africa. So let me first introduce myself. My name is John Sassel. I'm originally from a very small place called Luxembourg. I was raised on a farm both in Luxembourg and in France, even though I've been living now for the last almost 10 years in Ghana, West Africa. And I'm passionate about cattle, especially jerseys. I am a proud owner of about 30 jerseys that are sitting on the family farm in Normandy. The picture that you can see on that slide is one of my jerseys that is beautifully pictured there in apple trees that are blossoming. And I got that passion from the family, coming from a family that has been farming for a very long time. I've been able to use that passion on a daily basis today with the work I do. So today I'm the general manager of a small company called JS Africa. You can go to the next slide. JS Africa is a small but international consultancy firm that is specialized in cattle. So we have both commercial and consultancies activities throughout sub-Saharan Africa. We are also venturing right now into some production activities in Ghana to produce milk and meat for the local markets. And I think that's what I always try to share with people is that whatever we do it with passion, and we do it with cows because that's what we like to do. And so whenever we talk cows with customers, the Jersey breed comes up very quickly. Can go to the next slide. And we do believe that the Jersey has its place in West Africa, and even a very specific and special place. It's really very interesting to see the links that the Jersey has to West Africa, and how it can be very, very well utilized within the West African sector, and how it is already being utilized today. And that's really what we're going to be discussing today, the Jersey in West Africa. So I want to start with the origin of the Jersey. So we can go to the next slide to discuss that. And to start about the origin of Jersey, I want to talk about some of the original breeds that have been present in West Africa, especially in the tropical areas, in the rainforest areas, what I call today, which are all the areas where you can see cocoa being grown very well. There's this very specific type of breed that have developed in those areas. They are called the West African shorthorns. They are small breeds. They are treatment tolerant and overall very, very resistant to diseases, and adapted to those very hot and humid conditions, which larger cows are usually not adapted to. Because if you look at all the larger breeds, such as the Hudali, the White Fulani, that you can find all over West Africa, those have been brought from the Fulani by more northern climates, which are a little bit more arid and where conditions are a little bit different. And so those small breeds, because they are very small in size, just as the Jersey is. There's a few of them. There's a Muturu, which is quite well known in Nigeria. There's a Ndama, which you can find in a lot of countries in Western Africa. In Ghana, we have our own Ghana Shorthorn, which is part of the West African Shorthorn overall breed. And the reason why I'm mentioning that breed is that there's a very interesting link that can be established. And I do have to admit my evidence is very circumstantial, but just look at those pictures here on the next slide, slide number 6. You can see a Ndama cow, Ndama heifer, and a Jersey heifer. They are quite similar. They are both short, both brown. They both have a black nose. Well, the Ndama not always, but a lot. And one might think, this small Jersey cow on Jersey Island, how is it that it has good heat resistance? It's not very hot in Jersey Island. How is it that it has good disease resistance? Because Jersey is an island, has been exempt of a lot of diseases. So how is it that that Jersey cow does have those disease-resistant genes, and is well adapted to hot climates? Well, I do believe that it has something to do with the migration of cattle that, of course, happened with the migration of people in the last 2,000 years. And it has been scientifically proven that some of the Bos-Taurus breeds, and the Dama is a Bos-Taurus breed, that have been around in Central and Western Africa, have migrated at some point to Europe. And it is very easy to imagine that Dama and Jersey breed have a lot of genetics together, and that maybe even they have a common ancestor. And that's why it's very interesting to see that the Jersey might be very well adapted to West African breed, because it shares a common ancestor to the Dapa breed. Now, when I say West Africa, it's, if you go to the next slide, you will see that we have some very particular conditions in West Africa, whether it is the climate or in terms of the presence of diseases. First of all, climate. Almost all areas, and I haven't been everywhere, but almost everywhere I've been, you can see either tropical, so hot and humid, or arid areas, so which are hot and dry. It's hot everywhere. And now we are all into cows. We know that Bos-Taurus breeds usually do not do very well in hot climates. And you really have to select animals that are heat tolerant, or that have certain tolerance for heat. There's been so many examples of people bringing in cattle, whether it's Holstein, whether they're Montbéliard, whether they're Ayrshires, into West Africa with limited success, a lot of mortality due to temperature. Most of the times in most of the countries, there's a high temperature humidity index. And I have seen cases in Senegal, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Mali, where people have brought cows from Europe and they have not done well because of the temperature. So that makes the West African zone very specific. And on the next slide, you will see that, when you have high temperature, so everything above 25 degrees, and high humidity, everything above 40%, you have an environment that is not very well suited to most temperate breeds. So whenever I come in as a consultant now for investors, for plantations that are telling me, John, how can JS Africa help us with setting up a dairy farm? Well, one of the first things I tell them is that you have two choices, two strategies. Either you go with very high infrastructure investments. You build tunnel ventilated barns, for example, in tropical areas. Those are barns, and you can see on those pictures on the top right corner there, there's basically a whole wall of ventilators that will draw air and create an air current, an airflow within the barn, which sucks out some of the humidity and some of the heat. Of course, the roof is also isolated and everything. That makes it that you are able to create suitable conditions for all temperate breeds. Even the Holstein can survive. This system has been developed in Southeast United States, in Florida, Georgia, where you have very hot and humid climates as well during the summer. But it's very high infrastructure investment. And this is not suitable to everybody, because access to finance is not easy in most of West African countries. You have very high interest rates. So for people that are looking for a little bit, for systems that require less investments, you have grazing or even non-grazing systems where you can use either the Jersey breed, pure breed Jersey, or you can crossbreed. You can take most of the local breeds, crossbreed them with any Jersey bull, and within 3 years you'll have a milking cow that will be adapted to the local conditions. And that's basically what we're looking at in West Africa in terms of climate. Now, of course, there's also the diseases. Diseases is always a big discussion when we talk about cattle farming in West Africa. We have, of course, a high prevalence of tsetse flies, just like you can see on the map on slide 9. It's not exclusive to West Africa, but within West Africa, we have a lot of issues with trypanosomiasis, and that induces a lot of mortality. We also have a lot of tick-borne diseases, so it can create a challenge, especially when you are looking at doing grazing farms, whether they're dairy, either for dairy or meat. But I do believe that there also the Jersey, especially the Jersey crossbreed, can have real competitive advantages in our West African environments. And if you go to the next slide, this is just the introduction of, again, why are people getting interested in dairy in West Africa? And I want to give you a few examples of more people that have successfully brought in the Jersey, or projects that we are working on and trying to get in the Jersey breed to produce milk. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to show you a little bit, or to give you a picture about the dairy industry in West Africa. We have in our area very little milk production. Of course, I told you, very hot climates, not very well adapted to temperate breeds. Temperate breeds are the ones that have been selected for milk production. So we basically have mainly original Bostaurus or Bos-Indicus breeds, which are not milking breeds. And the only culture that is around milk will be within the Fulani communities, because they are natural herders. It's part of their culture, and they do produce a little bit of milk, but with very low producing animals. And I believe that one of the reasons outside the sanitary and temperature conditions is also that in the last 50 years, a lot of governments, and not everywhere, but a lot of governments, they did fail in their dairy development policy, or a lot of times they just lacked ambition to develop the dairy industry. Now, if you go on to the next slides, you will see why people are interested in investing in dairy in West Africa. There is, especially in the coastal areas, a lot of dairy imports. So if you look at the dairy imports, it makes, because of logistics, because of taxes, access to milk is very expensive, and you have very good milk prices. And today, the only milk that is being produced in all the countries, even if you look at Chad, where there's not a lot of milk imports, or Mali, where there's not a lot of milk imports, but somewhat of local milk production, this milk only comes from Fulani and other nomadic communities that have very low producing animals. And even though there's been a lot of attempts to trying to work with those communities, improving the breeds, it's often very challenging. So you have private investors that often are not linked to livestock production today, that are going into livestock production, that are going into cattle, because they want to produce milk, and they do see it as a profitable venture. So if you go to the next slide, you can see some pictures and some projects that I've come across in West Africa, where people have invested in dairy, and where they've used the Jersey. So whether it is in Nigeria, whether it is in Ghana, or many other countries, the Jersey has been one of the prevalent breeds used for dairy production, whether it is in a grazing system or an indoor system. Again, this is just to prove something that we already know. The Jersey is well adapted to African condition, and there's also West African condition, even though we have high heat, often high humidity, or very extreme heats in the north. The Jersey is a breed that is very well adapted to produce milk in the area. And if you go to the next slide, you can see, and this is something I really believe, is that the Jersey is also adapted to grazing systems. Whether it is for beef or milk production, it's something I promote a lot. You can see all over the world, grazing systems are very competitive in terms of milk production costs. It is usually always cheaper to graze for us than having to have to make hay, to make silage, bring it to the animals. And a few systems I've worked on, which are very interesting, is what I call, and what the industry calls, but it's not very well known, silvopastoralism. basically is grazing animals on the trees. And one of the examples I want to give you is a work I've done with a cashew plantation in central western Ghana. This is a place they have about 300 hectares of cashew. Cashew is a very interesting production because they only have 100 trees per hectare. And on this particular farm, you had almost pure stand bracharia growing under the trees, not being utilized. And so now you have 300 hectares of grass, basically, because you have very similar growth rates of grass, of shade-tolerant bracharia grasses than if they were out in the field. You have shades, which gives you very good protection from the sun to the animals. So if you can manage the thick-bone diseases and the tsetse flies, you have now perfect conditions to raise animals. Again, whether for meat or for dairy. But if you want to go for dairy, Jersey is really the breed to go. We all know that they are perfectly adapted to grazing. They are very feed efficient. And this is really a system that I try to promote a lot within plantations. Whether it is cashew plantations, whether it is palm plantations, I've even talked to some rubber estates, trying to get them to introduce cattle in their operations and to have an holistic approach to their production. And this is really a venue where I see development in the future for the West African dairy industries, developing grazing systems, and not only in plantations, but also on other private smallholder farms. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that because of those grazing systems, often you will want to favor crossbreeds because of the little bit more extensive grazing system. Crossbreeds can be very well adapted, whether there's F1 or even F2 systems when there's good management. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the different crossbreeds that have been done in West Africa between Jerseys and local breeds. So you have the obvious choice, the Dama. They're very close. They're very related. And in Ivory Coast, they have done a lot of research on Dama Jersey crosses where they saw, of course, very big increase of milk and very nice milking animals. The same has been done with White Fulani. I'm very excited about that cross just because there's a lot of White Fulani around in West Africa. Even more than the Gudali breed. I think it's one of the more prevalent breeds that you can find. And the crosses are just beautiful animals that milk very well adapted to grazing systems. And beautiful animals, just animals that you want to fall in love with. I've seen in Ghana, because they've imported pure Jersey breeds, pure Jersey cows about 15 years ago. They've crossbred them with some of the local Ghana Songa breeds, which are just also very nice animals. And then in Niger, even Nigeria, some people have crossed the Azawak with the Jersey, which is also a very nice outcome with good milk production. Basically, this just is to say, whatever local cows you have or you want to buy, I think most of them are very well adapted to cross with Jerseys and to start producing milk. And this is something you can see on the next slide, the number 16, is that depending on the outcome that you want to have, all options are out there in terms of possibilities for crossbreeding. So again, when I talk to people that want to set up a dairy farm and they want to buy local animals or they already have local animals, they want to crossbreed for dairy production, this is kind of the chart I show them in terms of, the organization that you can have between the different local breeds. You have breeds such as the Red Bororo. They have a lot of different names, like Hahaji. They are very tall animals, a little bit aggressive, not very good milk producers. Usually, I don't like to recommend them for milk production. The most prevalent breed that has been used as a support for crossbreeding of dairy animals is the Sokoto Kudali breed. They are hornless. They are fairly good milkers, very calm animals, and fairly large. So very easy to crossbreed, or even also with Jerseys. And then, of course, all other options are also out there. All depends on what animals you have, what you want to get at the end of the day. But this is really a chart that is to keep in mind, to be kept in mind when you want to do crossbreeding in West Africa with local breeds. It's really a subject that we are very passionate about at JS Africa. Myself, very passionate about it. And if you go to the next slide, just a nice picture of Jersey grazing under trees. And we really believe that the Jersey is a perfect breed for producing milk in West Africa. We really want to promote it. And the last slide, is just our contact details. If you have any questions or just want to talk, we are passionate. If you just want to come and talk about Jerseys and how we can set up something about Jersey cows in West Africa, I'll be more than happy to talk to any of you. Unfortunately, I could not make it to Malawi to talk to you directly and share that passion for our Jersey cows. But please don't hesitate to contact us, and we will discuss Jerseys day and night. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm very eager to look at other presentations as well and connect with our fellow Jersey passionate people. All right. Thank you very much.